July. It's for many people, you see the people with the red, white, and blue. And that's not to say that, we don't honor the US flag. Of course, the flag has taken on, from my perspective, a whole new meaning. It's like the American flag has been dirtied. It's been sullied by the far right folks. So let's talk a little bit about the 4th of July, a national, a federal holiday. And I know that for many years, people of color, more and more people of color are not even beginning to celebrate it, because if you really, really know, that's for another discussion, the history behind the 4th of July and what really happened on the 4th of July, you would really understand why many Black folks do not celebrate the 4th of July. So let's talk about freedom then, right? Because again, 4th of July, freedom, not necessarily for many Black people. What does freedom look like, or what should it look like for Black Americans today? And is it possible to achieve freedom? For us to really be free? And that's for either one of you.
Over the last, I want to say, few months, or more than that, but the last few months, I have been working on some programming, free programming, which I'm going to be looking into, like it being like a pilot program for the town of Manchester, for youth and families in what Manchester, Connecticut would consider more of the less affluent areas. But I'm from Philly, so if you have a driveway and trees, you don't live in a hood. But that's just me. So, and so I'm spending less time after my sabbatical focusing on protesting and being in places where I'm putting myself out there to be even spat in the face by white supremacists. I am now focusing on giving the tools to the people. To me, that what Fred Hampton wanted, to me, getting the people what they need. Because if I'm out there protesting, like, we need affordable housing. If I'm at the Capitol, we need affordable housing. And meanwhile, Black people are going homeless, right? So what I need to do is I need to figure out a way to raise money so I can help them pay their rent. So to me, what freedom looks like for us is to understand this is the monster that we're up against. And then slowly learning how, not so much how to slay the monster, but almost to move in such a way that you kind of camouflage so the monster doesn't necessarily see you, if that makes sense. I want to be able for my people, for us to be free. What that looks like to me is giving them financial literacy at an early age. So with one of our programs, we're going to be hiring 10 high school mentors. Well, in order for them to be a mentor, they have to go through financial literacy. They have to understand what direct deposit is. They have to understand all of that. So for me, it's about not so much me advocating for others, but teaching others how to begin to advocate for themselves. If I can show up into a school, and I noticed, which is kind of one of the ways I got started here in Manchester, my daughter was probably at the time one of the best soccer players in the school. And when I look at the team and she tries out, she plays on the elite team with all the girls. But when she goes to the school and she doesn't make the team, and she plays on the same exact team on an elite team, and she starts over these girls, well, if I know, I'm sitting there and I'm angry, and there's other Black and brown parents are angry, but I'm the only one that goes up to the Board of Ed to have the meeting, and they're like, no, I can't do that. I am in a place now where freedom is now me teaching them, yes, you see something wrong, you say something, because it looks like I'm the crazy one if I go up there and say this is a problem. You don't have anybody on your side to say this is also a problem. But if I'm going up there and I have my own meeting, and then so-and-so goes up there and so-and-so goes up there, we don't even have to all be in the meeting together. Eventually they're like, okay, listen, we're having way too many of these meetings. It's taking way too much of my time. So to me, I don't truly believe that we need to stop thinking that we're going to get that from our government. When you talked about whiteness is like the thing that it's always, that's the thing that we have to compare ourselves to. That's
it's
not
the
even
default. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
even just the default here. It's the default everywhere.
Yep.
So for me, I just think that freedom first is recognizing that we have to stop asking for it and looking for it from our oppressor. And then we then have to begin to take people like myself to take the time and go into the community and say, from point A to point Z, this is how you do this, this is how you do this, and this is how you do that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And I hear your passion. And that's one of the reasons why, Ms. Prescott, I wanted you to be here tonight, because I love your passion and the drive and the zeal that you have. So Dr. Tinson, I want to mention to the audience, we're going to start addressing your questions. So if you can start putting those in the chat. I see that there's one already, but before we do that, I'd like to hear what Dr. Tinson has to say about Black freedom, about what that should look like or would look like for Americans today, Black Americans today.
Yeah, so I think the first thing we could do is fund all of our schools adequately, right? All Black schools where there's predominantly Black children. And this is not to exclude any other children, but in public schools where it's predominantly Black, make sure that they are up to, that they have all the bells and whistles that all the rich schools have, right? But of course, we know how schools are funded, and so we can see that. But so that's why it has to be an overhaul, and that's why it has to just be money and resources reallocated. You can go down the list of things, right? You can go down healthcare, you can go down, we talk about educational access. We could talk about imprisonment, the abolition of prisons, and really rethinking crime in this country, rethinking punishment in this country. That will be some aspect of it. But all these things are just approximations, because you never get back all of the atrocities that you suffered already. You never get that history back. Think about in the 20th century how much land Black farmers lost in this country. That's an underrated topic that we don't even talk about.
Absolutely.
Not just land ownership, but farmers.
Homes also.
Homes, but farmers, their land was taken and eroded, and so for me, we could think about those aspects. When you think about the movement to the way in which, weed has been legalized, cannabis has been legalized, right, in many spaces. And you think about the number of Black men in particular who are doing sentences for weed charges. That is just the absurdity of absurdity. But who's not talking about freeing those Black people? The white men who are in the weed industry, right? So where you could turn any direction and point to an example. But I think, I don't want to be too dark here, but I think, we're living in the afterlife of slavery and an extended form of captivity. Now, you say, okay, you're a professor, that sounds real academic. But what I mean by that is that even as society so-called progresses, Black people are still left behind, right? And so there's always a playing catch up at every interval of progress. So when you talk about wages going up, where are wages for Black people? When you talk about homelessness, Black people, still suffering the brunt of homelessness and being part of the unhoused population. So the point is, it's just anywhere you look, you can, if you improve Black life over generations, not just one individual family, not just one individual case that we won, not just one individual settlement that you can't even talk about, right? Because once you settle, it's like, say if there's a wrongful death suit and there's a settlement, you have to sign an NDA in order to get the money, and so people can't even tell what they got, from their family member being lost if there is a settlement. And many times there's not even a settlement. But my point is just to say, if you improve over generations the opportunity to accumulate wealth, we could talk about student loan debt and the way in which student loan debt for African Americans is triple that of any other population, except probably Latinx population, right? Now you could point to different aspects of society and say, what is Black life in this particular category? And if you can figure out a way to structurally improve that over generations, then that will mean that that's a form of freedom, even though freedom is itself an abstract idea, right? So the point is just, how do we improve materially the life chances? And I'll just give you one example. Where I live in St. Louis, there was a study that talked about your zip code determined your life expectancy.
Absolutely.
And in the predominantly Black areas, the life expectancy for people like me, male, mid 40s, I'm supposed to get up, if I live in a predominantly Black area, I'm supposed to get up no further than about 55 years old. In the so-called predominantly white area, more affluent, wealth, concentration, et cetera, 91 years old is the life expectancy. So that's a 4-decade gap in my life expectancy versus somebody my same age who just lives 10 minutes away in a particular direction. And we can understand that as a part of all American cities. So this study that was done here could be done elsewhere. And we can look at Hartford, right? And Bristol, Connecticut, and Springfield, Massachusetts, and Holyoke, Massachusetts, and and look at that versus Amherst life expectancy, Springfield versus Amherst, right? And so this is why it's important to really understand structures. It's not just people's individual choices. These are things that people don't control by and large, right? Like which opportunities are available for healthcare, where you can go get healthcare, where you can get dental care, where you can have a livable wage, where you can have savings, where you can have investments and benefits and time off, not work yourself into the ground, not work in dangerous environments. Some of that stuff is outside of our control. See, so this is why we have to get back to looking at structures and institutions over just, some morality argument about who's doing what. And so for me, those
absolutely
mean some kind of freedom, but freedom is an abstract idea. But I think, liberation is something that I seek. And that's maybe that's another concept that we could think about.